So here we go. Should be about time to pop in with some fantastically recorded post-commentary to make up for that dreadful audio balancing during the stream, for which I profusely apologize. I blame new tools and significant changes on YouTube's backend combined together to make a mess of both a stream and a balance in terms of the levels. But so what we're gonna go ahead and do is just play these clips that I have fetched from the original YouTube recording of the stream, and just kind of go over my original points, hopefully a little bit more concisely, because for one, that ran awful long and I've been working on chopping everything up to hopefully shorten that a little bit. Is the second entry in the franchise, as I was about to say. Skip the first one for a number of reasons. One, its character roster is shorter. Two, it's got a few less features overall. Three, this was really the game that introduced me to the series in the first place. So, I mean, you're not missing much, in my honest opinion. So, all I'm going to do here, in this initial bit, is go into single-player survival so that I can pull out a couple of characters at first and kind of just show both things I like about the game and talk about bits of it that I'm stealing. And that's about where we're at.
Let's see how strong you've gotten. Let's go. Round one. Fight.
Two attack buttons, a strong and a weak. And here we go. We're gonna go back into this really quick. I'm gonna kind of sum up where we were. So I jumped into gameplay finally. It took me a little longer than I realized in initial recording, and we're going to talk about throws first thing. So you can see here, there's a throw here, a couple of them actually, and I demonstrate the ladder effect here with throwing the knives in the air that you can combo off throws in this game, which was at the time something I'd never seen before, which I thought was neat. Rather than just, oh, I grabbed you and I chuck you away and you take 5 to 7% damage. Another thing I'm kind of stealing from the game right there, just the fact that throw is a dedicated button for one, and for two, as I eventually go into, the fact that there are multiple throws as the series progresses. There will be things like down throws and up throws in mine. This game mostly, well, the series just mostly stuck to down throws as like a command throw of sorts, but it's a different thing than a normal throw. And you'll see that later in the footage, which I'll point out when we get there. So, as I was discussing there, in general, there's a strong and a weak button. My game will have 3: weak, strong, medium. Weak, heavy, medium. Actually, weak, medium, light, medium, heavy. Same thing, throws one button, supers one button, also my game. Dedicated button, eventually multi-directional supers became a thing. That's going to be sort of a thing I do, while I might have 1 to 2 inputs. And then this here is going to be the string system that I was discussing, where you can basically deal with single direction inputs, as I mentioned here, down, up, forward, etc. I'm actually just going to let myself talk here for the moment, because this might be good capturing, and that's similar to what I'm doing with Trigger, because I stole so much of my base level DNA for how I wanted this game to play, other than improving upon the things that I think the Platinum industry doesn't necessarily do well from this franchise, because I love it so much. Going further than that, where this game has cardinals only, as you can see, like you got down, you got back, and you've got up and forward, as well as, of course, your neutrals. In Fatal Trigger, we're planning to, actually I am planning to, because I'm mostly the game mechanic and combat designer, is we're going to be using diagonal to kind of further add, options to each character. So you might have a down back and then an up back starting string, both of which might use the same attack button, but lead to different starters that can then be pushed further with more button inputs like this to different extensions. Alright, and this is about where we're going to go back into post-com, just because you're going to see that this is where the audio balancing is another issue again, because the sound effects have kicked back in. And what I'm about to demonstrate here, as you see me there do just there, is the back A system in this game, which is kind of a unique thing about the game as well, where as you can see I'm pressing a back and A and I'm getting that funny face in front of hands pose with the Kakashi there. And what that leads to is the teleport when Yuruka hits me at the correct time. So I keep trying to demonstrate, and he unfortunately doesn't want to cooperate to demonstrate a repeated instance of it. But that's basically the gist, is I do the funny pose, he hits me in the funny pose, and I teleport. Other characters might do a counterattack or something similar. Some might even have a free teleport, essentially. I say free very loosely because what I mean by free is it doesn't require you to be hit like Kakashi is there. It just might be one that you spend a little bit of meter for, like say 20 to 25%, like say Itachi does when he shows up in the series at a later date. He basically has that teleport for 25% meter instead of a stance to get hit in. But the general concept of having everybody have a back and a button input that leads to a parry, or a counter, or a teleport off of a stance, or some other unique mechanic for a character that I might come up with that's not quite along those lines, but does the same general thing, is part of the intention. Another thing that I'm definitely stealing from this game, and its DNA to inject into my own games. Here comes another place where I've cut a significant bit of footage just because basically I can sum up the entirety of what I was rambling on about there as more or less Naruto Storm is a better Naruto game for fans of Naruto. The Clash of Ninja series here makes them a better competitive fighting game, especially with later iterations. So the first and the second one here definitely have their problems, including a number of glitches that I kind of go over, including Sasuke's OTG fire style being non-escapable, which does like almost 80% damage. Kakashi here having a down A that is unblockable if you're facing the same direction as Kakashi when he executes it. Everything to do with basically the AI and their weird super bugs that I demonstrated at some point in the footage. May have not already passed that at this point. Basically, you mash X if you have not full meter, and they have full meter, and the AI will automatically spend their super. Which is both good as other characters for dodging and as Sharingan Kakashi for basically getting free Sharingan copy supers, which is a thing he can do, because that's fair and balanced. And then, almost as if on cue, I get an example of exactly what I was talking about with said super bug. See, I get into fill his meter. I actually did it twice. The first one missed, and I was like, there's no way that was a normal thing. It had to be a fluke, right? So I go to demonstrate it again, and then of course, what do you get here? Exactly the same thing, so I'm still learning things about this game 12 or 13 years after I started playing it. Welcome to Clash of Ninja, ladies and gentlemen. And then right here, what am I doing? Of course, demonstrating that Sasuke OTG fire style inescapable nonsense that I mentioned earlier. So let's go ahead and take a look at that, shall we? Ah, can't use the dog, he's too short.
Let's get this started.
So we end up with myself. That's pretty hilarious. I thought it was pretty funny when I actually did it. I chuckled out loud, I do believe. But here we go. I'm going to basically show that we've got a number of glitches in this game that make this particular entry not the best for competitive balance, unlike later games in the series. There we go, full meter so I can do the thing now. Stop hitting me. Stop hitting me. And here we go. Look at this. All this meter he has and all that meter I'm spending, I do that much damage and he can't do anything about it. And then there's the Super Mash X bug I mentioned earlier again. And jump ahead approximately, basically, if you don't count the ones that were Japan only, this would be the, so this is the second, this would be the 5th entry that we received here, Revolution 3, because you got Clash of Ninja 1 and 2, and then we got Revolution 1, 2, and 3 on the Wii, which were basically slightly changed variations of the Japanese version on the Wii known as Naruto Clash of Ninja EX. So we got slightly tweaked versions, different characters a little bit, some added characters, and a different story, I do believe, in this particular iteration than the EX3. This one here is one of the only in Japan games. I don't have all of them currently. I have had ROMs, I should say. I just don't know which drives all of my other ROMs that I have are stashed on. So I only have this one and this one and this one currently on the hard disk that is plugged in where I'm getting all these ROMs from. So we're going to go ahead and jump from here to here, and then we'll go over to here eventually just so I can show some tweaks that were made to this, which I believe is arguably, as far as a non-fan patch type situation, the best balanced version of the game. Alright, new game time. So we're going to switch over to this one, which is the last American version of this franchise that we ever saw. Or EU as well. The European Union saw the same basic title set that we did. Alright, so there are a couple of things that this particular game has that I did not steal that don't show up after this particular entry. There's a couple other games. I believe it started technically in Revolution 2. I could be misremembering. And here comes the bit where I basically was talking about the paper bomb mechanic that's in this game and a couple of others. I do believe Revolution 2, if not 1, was the one that had it, as I mentioned, to start with. But it never really showed up after Revolution 3. Kind of disappeared off the map, as far as I'm aware. Not that it's a problem, because it's kind of a weird mechanic that was fun, but kind of jank in the first place.
Who's going to fight?
And then right about here is where we're looking at me in squad mode, so that I can show off both two characters at once, as well as just some of the fancier meat and potatoes of things I'm stealing from this franchise. Because this is really, the Revolution series is about where things really started to kick off in terms of high-level mechanics and advanced tech that you really had access to. Starting with the cancel system and those earlier mentioned down grabs that added another layer of depth. It really offered a lot of new things, and I think that's largely due to the switch in hardware from the GameCube to the Wii. And now I've got that pose, but I can dodge projectiles, as I mentioned here. Because I thought that was always neat when I switched to this particular game and got this version of Kakashi. You can dodge projectiles. Ah, there you go, perfect example. A back A that isn't a counter or a teleport, but a put you to sleep and give a free combo. And he puts me to sleep again. Of course he does. It's Kabuto. What else is he gonna do? See, there's Itachi doing his teleports that I mentioned earlier with that bar. See that? 1, 2, 3, 4 chunks of chakra, and 1 is going away every time I teleport. And then I get put to sleep again, because Coppertop. There's our down throw with that Genjutsu Crow setup, so not a throw, but a set you up for a combo throw, which I thought was really neat. Kind of the idea of what I wanted to do with like multiple throws that do different things. Forward and back for me being positional, down and up being unique to characters, and every character might not have access to all 5, because there will be a neutral throw, of course, as well.
Let's go. Let's go.
There's our paper bomb that I mentioned earlier, right there on the ground. It's one thing you can do with it is throw it on the ground and make it a trap. That's the thing I'm not stealing, because like I said before, pretty fun, kind of jank, kind of disappeared off the map, not really of consequence.
I'll just take care of my mission.
And what you're going to see here in a moment is a prime example of the cancel system I mentioned earlier, right about, wait for it, there. And so now, that is kind of the first place where I'm going to talk about the thing that I am absolutely wholesale, shamelessly stealing, which is this cancel system right here, and I'm going to basically push the envelope on it is the main goal. Take it and make it do more than it already does. Another thing being brought up a little later, since it's already here, I kind of saw it and was about to comment on it, but then I remembered I've got more footage of it later where I kind of demonstrate more of it. But this cancel system where you can spend a bar, as you saw, where I flashed white when I did the 2 kicks, and then started to do another string. So that's how it works. You do things when they're airborne, and you have a double B or 2 weak hit combo, and you go from whatever string you're doing, you push the cancel button, which is throw in this particular game, but it's going to be possibly a little different in mine, of course. I haven't really decided the input for it, but same basic idea. There I go again, doing it, and you go from whatever string you're doing in the middle of, hit the cancel, you go back to neutral, so you can do whatever next string follow-up you want. And really the idea becomes, you know, how creative can you be, how much bar do you have, how many cancels can you get? Right there, see, there's another one. There are, you know, capabilities in this game to do double cancel combos, or even triple if you're super good, and I even have an example of a double cancel with Sasuke on my channel in about a 28-second video, I believe. So if you want to go ahead and take a look for that, you can definitely find it. I may even just link it in the description or in a card in this video once I'm finished with the final edit. I honestly think this moment right here where Kagura knocks me through the stage transition is a perfect moment to segue to the last little bit of tech or mechanics that I really took heavy inspiration from this franchise for in terms of my own mechanics and my own game design. And that's this stuff right here. You'll see her glowing there pink, and I'm about to let her hit me to make me do the same. There we go. Itachi is now glowing purple. And that teleport I mentioned earlier is now free. What this whole glowy aura nonsense is called is LNP, or latent ninja power, in this game. And unfortunately, for most characters, it's not nearly as unique as it is for Itachi, where he gets that free teleport. You're about to see it. Yep, there he goes. See that? Watch my meter. Full meter that it used to cost a bar, and it didn't do anything. And then, same thing here. Ando Kakashi gets his back axe Sharingan activated that you might have seen me pop earlier if I didn't cut that piece of footage. But anyway, it's normally a full bar super. It costs whatever bar he has available. If he's in latent ninja power, aka low health mode. And that's sort of where I got a lot of inspiration for what I'm calling crisis mode in my game, which is same thing, basically. Low health activates special mode. However, I want it to be a little bit more balanced than just here. I made your character better. And so it's not going to just be this big raw stat boost or this thing that makes them automatically 110% on paper and in practice better, just different. So I wanted to kind of capture the feel of the whole like shonen and seinen anime, and the hero being, you know, pushed up against the ropes and needing a big power up to get somewhere, or like activating that forbidden power or whatever the case may be for the character in the show or the comic in question, without the balance issue that comes with something like just giving a character a raw stat buff, or doing something like the ultra gauges for the revenge meter, where you just take damage and boom, you have a big super that does ridiculous damage because you did the wrong thing and got hit. I never really liked that kind of mechanic design or balancing, so I wanted to sort of get the feel and the intent of the hype moment and the cool character doing the cool thing, without the balance risk or the just straight, you're better now, so it becomes a race to lowest health. And I really wanted to kind of make it so that the character becomes different rather than just better. So it becomes a game around the game between the two opponents of maybe you don't like the way your character's crisis mode plays compared to their regular version, or maybe your opponent's terrified of that. So depending on who wants what, it becomes a game of how do I keep my opponent out of crisis, or in the case of a player who doesn't like their character's crisis as much as their main target, how do I keep my opponent from pushing me there? And I think that's a lot more interesting and something to play and balance around than the alternative of just here's a stat buff or here's a free super or whatever the case may be in most other fighting games. So hopefully my iteration on the low health mechanic is as interesting as I think it is on paper. That's the end goal. But there you go. Again, another thing that I kind of took the idea from, but I'm building upon those bones that are here, similar to the latent ninja power thing, where I'm stealing the general gist, but pushing that envelope out a little further, or tweaking it. So again, that's basically everything. I know it's a long list, and I talked for an awful long time, but that's it. And so any questions anybody has regarding anything I just said, or anything that I maybe didn't bring up that anybody might have, feel free to either let me know here in the chat if you are here, or leave in the comments if you're watching the video on demand once it's done processing on YouTube's backend, because I do believe I have it set to auto save these streams, which is why I decided to switch to YouTube as my streaming platform for both this and probably future streams of other content as well, alongside the fact that Twitch, as some people might know, has been going through a bit of a rough patch with both streamers and the MPAA, for example, and the like. So alongside a lot of the other changes that happened with the buyout from Amazon, I'm not saying it's all bad, but there are just some things that have made it rough, both as a consumer of content on Twitch as well as a streamer. So I've kind of decided that I'm probably going to go ahead and give this a try and see how YouTube does, considering I'm planning to pump out a lot of just recorded YouTube content, more than I ever have as well. I want to really pick this channel back up and actually do something with it. As well as get into these developer conversations and pushing out the concept of my game and letting people know that, hey, we are still here. Lots has gone on, but we're still here. So that's kind of the plan. Going from there, I can boot up this game if anybody actually wants to see the last game in the series. But other than that, anybody has any questions, I am currently looking at the chat window. But otherwise, I'm just going to go over a couple things really quickly here. It looks like nobody is watching anymore. There's a couple people who popped by. Thanks for coming by, you folks. Appreciate that you stopped by for even a little bit. But let's just go over a few things really quickly. Namely, where are we? Where have we been? Things have been kind of radio silent for a really long time, especially given that this is episode 2 of what I said was going to be a regular weekly series, and it was 2 years ago, more than almost 2.5 at this point. So here's the deal. Like I said, kind of briefly, I did leave out an individual that used to be on our dev team. Luckily, somebody that wasn't necessarily mission critical to things. I certainly do not want to imply that they weren't useful and didn't contribute anything, but there were some personal conflicts of interest, shall we say. I'm not going to go into too much more detail because it's not necessarily my decision to disclose that information, but I found out some information about this individual that made the idea and the viability of continuing working with them a little bit less than desirable. So with that in mind, I basically had to go back and remove anything they contributed because of, intellectual property laws and the fact that I hadn't signed him on as an official employee or anything yet. I hadn't really done that to anybody. So I did not own any contributions that he would have made as the business owner yet. So I had to do that, and that took some time, as well as a great deal of energy out of me, because it was both from the position of myself as the development team head, and from the position of me personally as somebody who considered myself that this individual's friend. It was draining. It really was. It pushed me into a rather exhausting state mentally, and it took a lot of time to wrap up those changes, basically. And really quick, since I'm not actually showing any gameplay at the moment, I'm going to go ahead and pop up my webcam, because I do have that plugged in, just so you guys can actually see my face. I feel it's weird when you're not actually doing any gameplay, to just be listening to somebody talk while you stare at my stream capture details from the browser. But yeah, I just wanted to kind of touch base with the actual progress of things in the dev team and what I was kind of alluding to regarding the departure of one of our members. So yeah, that took some time and some effort and some energy out of me, and left me in a bit of a murky place overall. But how do I put this? I dealt with the situation as best I felt I could, and as I mentioned, removed that particular individual's contributions, which was not easy and did take time and work on my part to accomplish. That removal of content, and I'm still working on finalizing rewrites based on that removal of content. Mostly it just meant reverting to a previous version of the scripting and the lore and the concept of how things were going to roll out as far as major story beats and characters. Nothing, deal-breaking and earth-shattering that you could never be recovered from. It just took time. So that's been pretty well, as best you can, cleaned up. It was definitely messy, but it's been done as far as I can do with the circumstances at hand. With that said, basically where we are is similar position, still looking for funding, still looking at approximately 5,000, though we are going to maybe stretch for 6 if folks will hear us out on it. Just because I have really looked at assessing current pricing of things, the current market, and what we need to accomplish even like a 2-character demo with reliable gameplay. So that all taken care of, what you're dealing with is where that's going to be and how we are taking those contributions. Long story short, the original GoFundMe link that some of you may be familiar with at gofundme.com/fataltrigger is currently dead. Long story short, from what I understand, it was murdered in terms of activity just because no one had contributed to it in 14 months or so from when they shut it down, I believe. And as a result, they just kind of closed the page down. They gave us the funds that were there, of course. Nobody's money was lost. I did receive those funds. I did allocate them to small purchases with what we had to help further the project. So your money did not go to waste. Those of you who donated, I want to make that very clear. But we will be pushing a new version. Essentially, I'm gonna rather cheekily call the fundraiser page round 2 as, you know, fighting game. funny. But there we go. So that's going to be the plan. I'm going to put it at probably GoFundMe.com or Fatal Trigger round 2, but that seems a little long. So what I'll probably end up doing is like GoFundMe / FT round 2, or maybe Project FT, something like that. That lets it be kind of short, still easy to get to, but clearly delineates that, hey, this is the second version of the page that you may have seen before, for those who may donate to help us get the tech demo done. With that said, I've also chunked a pretty significant amount of personal funds into making the project happen. So, like I said, I'm maybe shooting for 6,000, but really it's going to come down to, like, I'm going to have to do an actual tally. So it may end up being less than the initial 5,500. Really, once I've kind of mapped out what have I bought, what have I improved upon, what did we have, what do we need, and really getting a figure. But somewhere, I can assure that it will be somewhere between 4, I really want to say more like 4,500 and 6, just depending on, again, current market, what we need, and the pricing of things. So with all that said, it's kind of where we're at. Things have moved along as best I can, and as I mentioned earlier, of course, there was the issue of COVID as well, which again has kind of put everybody on hold in terms of, you know, I'm sure a lot of people's personal projects as well as many people's sources of income. I'm not necessarily luckily in quite that boat. Things have definitely been tighter as a result of just increasing expenses and the costs of food rising and that, but I have been privileged enough to not have completely zero income in this particular situation to keep myself afloat. But it has meant that a lot of my personal time has had to be steered away from things I would have liked it to be for the last little while. Managed to free up some of my schedule so that hopefully I can, as I kind of mentioned at the beginning of this stream, push towards doing this regularly again, and actually, like, I should say again, doing it regularly in the first place, like I promised I would way back when I shot the first episode, and more to the point, producing regular content on the channel that's not just FT, just because I want to, as well as I think that having more content means more people come to the channel, maybe more people find out about FT. Now, it's not like to say that that's my only objective and my only reason for doing so, but it certainly wouldn't hurt. So that's kind of where we're at. And I apologize for the stream hiccups. Like I said, it's been an interesting moment trying to figure out the current version of Radeon recording software and the current version of YouTube Studio. They don't work the way that they used to between the two of them to set up streaming. It used to be like a quick click a button here, sign into your Google account there, click this button over here, and you're done. It was a little bit more complicated than that, as I found out from a quick Google after things were breaking, basically saying I was streaming and then not, and then streaming and then not, every 2 seconds. So, with that said, sorry about the 15-minute delay and a bit of the rambling here at the end. I just had a lot of information that I wanted to kind of get out there for today, between both the concepts of this episode that I had planned out the whole title and like what we were doing today a long time ago. Like, I knew this was going to be episode 2 and what it was going to be about, but then I had to tack on, hey, this is where we're at, this is what happened with the dev team, this is what happened with the guy that I had to kick off. So it was a lot of information that had to kind of be thrown out there on top of what was already on the plate and on the docket. But with that said, I think we're about wrapped up here, really. The VOD will be updated with links and all that once I have those finalized, as I mentioned earlier. So that'll be it, I think. Thanks again.